I think it's too early to tell that the British experience has failed. I think it's fair to say that because of British state funding being available, some of the most luminous Muslim scholars from countries such as Mauritania, Yemen, Pakistan and elsewhere have been able to tour parts of the UK and meet ordinary Muslims that would ordinarily not have access to those minds. So, that's a huge plus. But that's not to say that the British model is therefore applicable here in the US, and the question that the government arbitrates which form of Islam is acceptable or not acceptable is without any doubt a violation of ordinary Muslims' understanding of what their faith ought to be. But all of that said, I'm not an American, and I'd be loath to be interfering in what either the NYPD is doing with American Muslims or how American Muslim leaders have responded to it. And again, I think it's perhaps best for either Asma or Sheikh Hamza to respond to the developments here within the US.
I would just say preemptive law force, historically that was the role of the FBI to do that. So it's very interesting that these local police forces now are being asked to do this kind of preemptive, which is a very slippery slope, I think, into police-state activity. And I think Americans should be really concerned about this, because it might be the Muslim community and everybody says, okay, they're just checking out the Muslims. But once, go ahead, somebody's going to object to that, maybe, I don't know. But I personally, I think it's very problematic. I think probable cause is one of the foundations of our Bill of Rights, the search and seizure, all of those bills, Bill of Rights were put there to protect citizens from having these foundational rights protected.
The only other footnote I'd add to this is, there are two aspects to a terrorist act. One is the intent, and two is the ability to materialize that intent. Now, many of these guys on Facebook pages and web chat rooms are committed to X, Y, and Z, terrorist act. That doesn't amount to more than a New Year's wish list. But who's materializing them and saying, well, here's the bomb, go ahead, brother, and blow up A, B, or C military base? Often that tends to be the FBI and other law enforcement agencies. So the materialization of that intent comes back to the law enforcement agencies, and I think that's questionable. And again, here I think there's worth taking something from the British model, and that is when people have appeared on the British model's prevent radar that there is an individual in a mosque who is trying to recruit people to commit a terrorist act or to glorify Osama bin Laden as a martyr or a great sheikh of Islam. Once that's happened in British mosques, to the credit of the British government, they've set up a program where other Muslims, imams and others, can take this individual aside and subject them to what you might call counseling, and therefore injecting doubt in that mindset. So, using religion to counter religious extremism has been a more successful model, rather than, egging on this individual to then say, well, here's the gun, here's the trigger, here's the bomb, go ahead, do your deed. The bomb doesn't go off. Now you're in a courtroom in the dock. Because that then undermines trust between Muslim communities and law enforcement agencies, that prevents further tip-offs that should be coming from Muslim communities, because they are, American citizens and they're committed to the safety of the homeland.
And Muslims have consistently reported in mosques when they've heard things that have troubled them. And the FBI has ample evidence for this, that citizens just acting out of their own volition, have come forward when they've seen something that troubled them or they thought it was suspicious.
I would just like to offer that as a policy idea, that the way to, in a sense, to remove American government hand from these kinds of activities is just, this is an amazing thing to me that we're so clueless. We could dramatically expand with a little bit of money. Student exchanges, scholar exchanges, professional exchanges, from Americans to Islamic societies around the world, from Islamic societies to American universities. I see in my own university the richness and the learning that takes place when American students interact with Muslim students from around the world and vice versa. And why aren't we doing more of this? It just strikes me as just amazing that it's such a cheap thing to do.
Well, I think, just really to dovetail on that, the Saudi Arabia, I know personally that most Saudi Arabians had a love affair with this country. And they felt after 9/11 like that it was unrequited. They were jilted lovers. They really did, because many of them studied in this country, and suddenly all of them are being accused of terrorism because 15 out of the 19 hijackers were from, and they would say, yeah, and they're from a region that I'm not from. They were from the south. I'm from the Hijaz. We would never do that. I mean, this is the mentality, you know, really. The tribe. They were tribal people, not. Yeah.
But Jennifer Bryson from Witherspoon tells a very interesting story of, you know, young Saudi Salafis coming to the US and then going and meeting the Amish in Pennsylvania, thinking we're very similar. You know, what do we essentially have against the US if the US is home to the Amish that have long beards and everything else that comes with the religious literalism? So, you know, there are commonalities there that can play on.
We did one program. I took them to Michael Ratner and Barbara Oshansky, who are these two people that do civil rights, and they were the lawyers representing the Guantanamo people. They're both Jewish. She is actually half Palestinian, half Jewish. You know, interesting combination. But Michael Ratner is a Jewish scholar from Columbia, and we interviewed them. And this young Saudi man asked him, "Why are you doing this?" And he said, "Well, I come from a Jewish tradition, and we have this idea of the Tzaddik, who's this truthful person that has to stand up for justice." We came out of there, and they were, these Saudi, you know, there's 3 of them with me, 4, and they were just like, he told me this is a paradigm shift for me. The idea that you could have a Jewish person committed to justice. I mean, this is laughable for us, but this is the reality on the ground for a lot of these young people, and that is the way to reach a lot of these people, is just getting to know people. You know, the Quran says that we made you peoples and communities lita'arafu, to get to know one another, not to hate one another. And so that is you know, that is the best way, I think, to do that. I wholeheartedly agree with that.
And to vie one with another in virtue.
In virtue, vie in virtue, yeah.